So when I say the lack of legal distinctions or the absence of legal distinctions, that is where there is actually no principles of law actually applied, and there actually is no law present at all. You see, to have the view of the infant as though he is deserving of the same penalty as Hitler, and some religious people, they have the newborn or being deserving of the same penalty as those who go to hell, and they'll even assign hell, that man is born under the sentence of hell, and they'll do the classic thing, which is, of course, don't go by what words mean, and they'll just make stuff as severe as possible. The wages of sin is death, and obviously death is hell. Really? And so they lie about context. They just butcher context, and it's so obvious that they're doing it. In Romans, it's talking about the believer, and if you look at the context, they have undergone the separation from the corrupt nature. The death in Christ that did not occur 2,000 years ago, which occurs at faith in Christ, at maturity, separation from the corrupt nature, walking after the Spirit. That's when it happened, and that's who he's talking to when he's saying about turning back to that which they have been separated from. They're not enslaved to it. There's nothing that drags them back into the sin house. It's interesting, the right to life crowd make themselves out to be more just than their God is. They claim a right to life, in the abortion argument, and right to life, but their God says they don't have a right to life, and in fact they deserve death just for being born. You see, when they say the wages of sin is death, the infant is born sinful, or the infant deserves death because Adam ate of a tree, which the infant had nothing to do with. There's the absence of any legal distinctions whatsoever. They have God holding one guy accountable for what somebody else did. It's like dragging somebody into court and saying, I don't care who he is. It doesn't matter who he is. It doesn't matter what crime was committed, even if he did it. It doesn't even matter if it's actually a crime. I'm going to treat the guy as though he were a criminal. How's that? And that's what they have God doing. And God can't claim ignorance, their God. And so it's not like he got you confused with Adam. He knows you ain't Adam. He's holding you accountable for what Adam did and saying, well, you're condemned in Adam. He was the federal head, so therefore, whatever Adam does, you suffer. So then if Adam does something where wrath is deserved, then God has wrath on you for what Adam did. Now you see how in a human courtroom, or the so-called lower law, the lower justice, it's a complete violation of everything in it. Because there is absolutely no legal distinctions in this so-called higher justice or higher law. None. There are no legal principles whatsoever. Oh, the guilty? And even those that aren't guilty, you pretend as though they are. You pretend the infant's done stuff that, as though he were accountable like Hitler. Enslaved to sin? God has wrath on you for being born enslaved to sin. As though you should have avoided that somehow, and because you didn't, well, tough luck. And you see how their God sets it up so that you cannot avoid it. You were born in sin. God has wrath on you. And he made sure that you could not avoid it. You see, because you weren't there before you existed in order to prevent that from happening. They poke fun at the Calvinist God, capricious and arbitrary. You know what that means? Complete lack of legal distinctions. Yet they themselves, their God of the unlimited atonement, complete lack of legal distinctions. It's not just the absence of legal distinctions or the absence of law. It's for the purposes of trying to make God appear as evil as possible, which of course is being in a state of Satan. And so then the penal substitute God specializes in punishing the innocent and specializes in letting the willfully guilty get off scot-free. So basically the innocent bank teller gets hung, and Bonnie and Clyde, they ride off into the sunset with all the loot. And that's because the car broke down, so they went and shot a farmer and stole his horses. But that's okay. They'll get away with that too. God hung the farmer for them stealing his horse. So God is portrayed without any legal distinctions in his policies to make him appear to be as evil and lawless as possible. It's not possible to make God appear to be more lawless without the whole deception blown apart. So they can't have God breaking some things because people won't believe it. But you see how through trickery they get people to believe God violates the most basic standards of law and justice, and they make it seem believable to the naive. They start with a false premise in order to engage in inverted reasoning. The inverted reasoning is when it's turned completely on its head, and so therefore the state of God is as well, and so God is Satan. The wages of sin is death is like God holds you accountable, even for that which you're not accountable for, and even for that which is not a sin. Last time I heard being born was not a crime. They might want to inform the pro-life crowds, or the right-to-life crowds, that they have a contradiction in their philosophy. They'll say the infant has a right to life, but their God says he does not. He has a right to die for being born. They're just as crazy as the Calvinists are. The Calvinists, they just don't care if they appear crazy. The right-to-life crowds, they want to appear as though they're not crazy. The Calvinist is not into fooling himself, but the right-to-life people, they're into fooling themselves. Where they themselves have the complete absence of legal distinctions, and under the doctrine of advocacy, if your God has absolutely no legal distinctions, and you praise that, that's the way you want it to be, and you yourself advocate iniquity, and that's the way you want people to be treated. Because they'll say, you see, that's just for God to determine that infants deserve death and infinite wrath. You see, they must advocate their God being just, and so they themselves, they want it to be that way. That's the way they want God to treat infants, that they are deserving of infinite wrath. That's just plain crazy. That's a complete absence of any legal distinctions whatsoever.